Hi there. Are you struggling with your reading skill? Are you a common reader and do you want to take your reading to the next level? Or are you preparing for an English test and are you struggling to get the answers of the reading part done in time? Well, this video can be more beneficial for you than any other video because in this video, I'm going to tell you not only about different forms of reading, but also different reading skills and some of the best methods to do reading effectively, as well as I give you advice on what's the best way to do the reading, whether it's a good idea to read non-stop or is it a good idea to take breaks in the middle. So let's get started without any further ado. Welcome back to Christian Friendly. Well, reading can be broadly divided into two types. One is extensive reading and the next one is intensive reading. Extensive reading is the reading you do in your spare time for entertainment purpose. So the main purpose you do extensive reading is the entertainment or your interest. So you choose books as per your interest, whether you read stories or novels or essays or poems, you choose them according to your interests and according to your spare time. Intensive reading is opposite. You read a certain part of the text or you read something under time pressure and you read for a particular purpose. Maybe, for example, to get certain marks in your exam, and you read under time pressure. And you read it even though you sometimes don't like it. You'll have to read it by hook or by crook. You have no other option to reading that. So that is intensive reading. Studies have shown that for language acquisition, or if you want to read to improve your language of a second language or foreign language, it's recommended that you spend a lot of time extensive reading, because what you read until you become emotionally gripped by it has more beneficial impact on your language acquisition, language learning, than reading some boring text or reading compulsorily, reading for certain marks. Because when you read intensively, you're under a lot of anxiety, under nervous conditions, and under a lot of pressure. But when you read extensively, you read for pleasure. And as you read extensively, you acquire certain language structures. You learn certain uncommon vocabulary unconsciously. So psychologists, educationists recommend extensive reading for language learning. Now let's move on to different reading skills that are beneficial for you to master. Well, the first reading skill to acquire is skimming. Skimming, by the way, means just running your eyes along the lines of the text, just to understand the text overall, to understand the text as a whole. So for that, you need to survey the text. For example, by reading its title, by reading its subtitle, and by reading its first few lines, you understand what the text is about. Do this. Whether you read in general, or whether you are reading under time pressure, or whether you are reading during exam conditions, you must always do that. Because if you don't understand what the text is about in general, you are unlikely to understand the rest. You are unlikely to answer the questions correctly. So the first reading skill is skimming, which is reading very fast, 2 to 3 times faster than normal speed, and understanding the text as a whole. And the next reading skill is scanning, which means searching some specific information in a text very quickly. For example, searching for certain percentage data in a text very quickly. For that, you just search or scan the key words or key information in the text. You don't read the whole text like you do skimming. And the next reading skill is reading for detail, which means reading a certain part of the text carefully to decide your answer. In most English proficiency tests, examinees or candidates are required to scan certain information, and then after skimming or scanning certain specific information, you'll have to read a certain section of the text carefully to decide the answer. You spend a little bit more time reading a certain portion of the text to decide your answer. And the next reading skill, which is mostly neglected by most candidates, is identifying paraphrase. Well, most language tests, like IELTS, test the candidate's vocabulary. And one way to do this is to give the questions in the forms of synonyms. And your success, to a large extent depends on your ability to identify synonyms of the words given in the text. So that is finding right synonyms in the text. And whether you are going to take a test very quickly or whether you are a university student who needs to do a lot of assignment, all these reading skills are essential. You spend a lot of time doing extensive reading, and you read in your spare time to improve your vocabulary and knowledge of grammar. And you also use skimming, scanning, reading for detail, and identifying paraphrase for your assignment purpose. And as for how should one read, is it a good idea to read the whole text without break 2 or 3 or 4 hours non-stop? Or is it a good idea to divide the whole text or your whole reading task into smaller chunks and focus on a shorter text or smaller chunk of text at a time? Well, studies have shown that the latter approach is more beneficial because when you read a lot, your mind becomes dull. And if you take a short break, maybe a few seconds of break or a few minutes of break and get back to the task, it will be more beneficial than concentrating on a longer text for hours and hours, because you may find it boring or your mind becomes dull. However, if you divide your whole text into smaller chunks and take break, it's very likely that you may get distracted. So it's up to you. However, whether you should spend a lot of time reading the whole text at once or divide your text into chunks really depends on individuals. Some prefer to spend a lot of time, they're not bored, their mind doesn't become dull at all, no matter how much they read. However, some people may find, the vast majority of people find reading a text for a longer period of time boring, tedious. So it's recommended that you divide the larger reading task into chunks and concentrate on one chunk or unit of text at a time. So with this, we finally come to the end of today's lesson. So in today's video, I explained to you 2 forms of reading, which is extensive and intensive, and 4 types of reading skills: skimming, scanning, reading for detail, and identifying paraphrase. And finally, I gave you advice on whether to concentrate on larger reading task or divide it into chunks and focus on one unit of text at a time. So with this, I take leave of you. Until next time, take good care of yourself and your family. Good luck with your study.